Hey guys, how you doing? Today I'm going to test a new camera. This is the Nikon D800, and the remarkable thing about this camera is it has a lot of megapixels, 36. So one of the things that I like to do is try to preview my images as I go along with the shoot. And I usually do that two ways. One is with a USB cord straight into a laptop, and another way is when I'm in the field, I like using my iPad, so I use a wireless connection. Pretty much now the most common card is the iFi card, and it used to work pretty good. But the problem that I see with this camera is that the smallest JPEG setting is still 9 megapixels. And usually when I'm out in the field on the other cameras that I had before, the smallest JPEG setting was much smaller, like 2 megapixels, something like that. So jumping up to 9 megapixels, the file size just becomes that much more proportionally larger. So I wanted to test to see how this performs with this setting. Now, the small JPEG setting changes depending on how the camera also crops its sensor. Well, this is a unique feature of Nikon. So although this is a full frame camera, you can decide to shoot in a slightly smaller 1.2 crop, a 5:4 crop, and then there is like the APS-C 1.5 crop. So your images will vary in megapixels and file size as you change those settings. Another thing is the JPEG setting has different quality settings. So you have three choices: basic, normal, or fine. Basic being the smallest, normal in the middle, and fine being the largest. So the first test is the smallest file size, and this is what you're going to get if you really wanted things just to go as quick as possible. Let me verify the crop. This is a DX crop, and the picture is going to be, it says here, 3.8 M. The way I've set up this camera is I'm at a high ISO, 6400 at f8. I don't really need to use that in my environment here, but I want to introduce some noise just to kick up the file size. Let's get started. So I press click, and the funny thing about iFi is that sometimes it takes a little while to do its thing. Okay, there it goes. And it's at 100%. Sometimes it takes a little while to get kicking, but once it starts going, it's perfectly fine. So that's like the second picture. And you see that one was much quicker to come up, and this one is done. One thing to note about my Wi-Fi connection is that I'm using one router, and my laptop and this are on the same channel right now. So the bandwidth is actually being cut in half. If I were to put this on two separate routers, or two separate, I should say, channels, Wi-Fi channels, you can do that if you have multiple access points, let's say. But if you do something like that, you'll be able to get even faster speeds because it's not sharing between these two devices. But you see, this is definitely usable. So I'm just going to take a couple more shots, and then you'll see how fast this goes. So that one is transferred now. The second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one. So in the smallest JPEG settings here, this actually ends up working pretty quickly. Like, I wouldn't mind this speed at all. But let's say you wanted to use FX, not DX. So I'm going to change the camera setting now. I have a shortcut on this set so that I can change how it crops, which is another cool feature about this camera. So it's now set up for FX. and the image size would be 9M. So it's like 9 megapixels, whereas before it was 3.8. See what these file sizes are. So generally, they are pretty small. They're a little bit less than a megabyte. Yeah, they're like 900 something KB. This one's 1 megabyte. You know, I took a picture of this screen. I'm sure if I took a picture of a much more complicated scene, the file size would be much larger and it would be slower. So obviously a 2 megabyte file would be twice as slow as this. But let's see how this 9M is. 9M is over twice the size of 3.8M. So let's see how this reacts here. This full frame image. Okay, it's transferring. You can definitely tell it's slower. You can see it. Another one coming in. And that's it. I took 3 pictures. They're done. Now I'm just gonna keep taking some more. This will be underexposed, this one. But one file transferred, the second one is coming. Second one's arrived, the third one's coming. And the third one has arrived. And there it is. So I'm going to keep taking more. So these are full frame images. Once again. And okay, that one is done. Second one is coming. That one's done. Third one is coming. And that's it. So these ones here, maybe you can or cannot see the vignetting from here, but these are definitely slower than what we had before. Let me take a look at the image file sizes. And they are about twice the size, like 1.8. Just speaking of file size, I mean, you can just use your imagination. Once again, if we double this file size, it would just take twice as long to transfer. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to change the quality to fine. The image has started to transfer. And this is definitely much slower. It's still working on the first image here. Still working on the first image. Yeah, this does not look promising. First image is done. Second image is going. And it's still going. It's at 50%. Well, I guess fine is just too much for this. If you wanted, second one is done, the third image is copying. If you wanted to have a good response rate that's keeping up with what you're shooting with, this is not going to work here. So just changing the image quality from basic to fine did not work. I think for my workflow, when I'm trying to look at my images, I don't need to use fine, especially when I'm just on a laptop, when I'm on my iPad, because the screen can't even resolve that much. I don't need 9 megapixels. Okay, this is done. I don't need 9 megapixels to tell me that my image is in focus. It's a good image. This file, when I set the small JPEG to fine, it's 8.2 megabytes. So that's significantly larger, 8.2 megabytes versus the 1.8 that we had before. So that's actually over 4 times the size. Let's drop back down to basic. And I'm going to change the image size to medium. Medium is 20 megapixels. I think keeping the JPEG at basic, but increasing the megapixels, it might create like a 4 megabyte, I'm just assuming 4 megabyte JPEG or so, perhaps. So it should be twice as fast, I think, what I just did. Now, I'm mentioning these file sizes because right now, like I said, when you take your shots in complicated situations, the small JPEG won't be as fast as this because it's going to have more work to do to try to compress a more complicated scene. So in a normal situation, if it's going to be like 4 megabytes, this is just how long it's going to take. So let's see how this works. Okay, first image is transferring, and it is definitely much faster than the small JPEG fine. So this is the medium JPEG basic. This is the second file. Second file is done, third one is beginning. Well, let me take a look at the info, and my theory was right. It's about almost 4 megabytes. This was 3.9, this is 3.9. So I will never use 20 megapixels using this i5 system. It's just not necessary. I think that if I were to shoot in JPEG small, I would keep the image quality as JPEG basic. And if the file ends up being significantly larger, even if it became 4 megabytes, I think I might be able to live with that. Anything larger than that is just too slow. How far am I away from the router? It's not really that far away. I'd say, let's see how many feet. 6, 7. I'd say about 8 feet. I'm 8 feet from my router. Both the laptop and the camera are 8 feet. So with 4 megabyte file size JPEGs, I think that for me, it's good enough. For you, I guess it really just depends how quick you want it to go. But that's it. I think my test is done. Hopefully that enlightened some of you out there, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye. Bye.